hope you enjoy this video. Time to dive into the book.
Hello, this is Jessica with onastackofbooks, and today's video is a book tag video, and this tag was created by Randy Ray at the Literate Texan, and he created this tag to complement his new book club. I do believe the seriously well-read book club. So, I'm going to jump into these prompts. These definitely made me think. I had to really kind of look through the books, and I made a decision, and then I changed the decision. And so sometimes it's hard to narrow it down. But the first prompt is, what book made you take reading seriously? And I ended up deciding to go with The Clan of the Cave Bear. This is a beloved book of mine that I read when I was about 18, and then I read the whole series, in a summer. And so I'm interpreting this prompt as I took it seriously because reading became a priority. It is what I chose over everything else that I could be doing, because I was just so sucked in. I loved the main character, Isla. I loved her childhood and her life was fascinating, but I loved her character and who she was and how she was. And so I've reread it, and I still love her. So that, obviously there was countless books that I read as a child and through school that were special to me. And, but yeah, to narrow it down, what I took seriously, I'm going to go with The Clan of the Cave Bear. And prompt number 2, what book did you pretend to understand? Be honest. And I have 2 for this answer. And so a couple of years ago, I read the first 15 lives of Harry August. I have since put it in a little free library, so I will show a picture. I read it. It is about time travel, and it is a lot of mathematics and obviously several lives, 15 lives to be exact. And it just became one of those, I was having a hard time following and really understanding how he was navigating and choosing what he was doing based on, the multiple lives. So yeah, I read it, and then I was like, time travel, yeah, it just wasn't my thing. And then most recently I read The Road. We read it for book club. And I understood it, but I was surprised and didn't understand why it was so popular. I know that it's a dystopian, and I don't read a ton of that genre. But I felt like it was a very unique writing style where you didn't always know who was talking. You didn't always really know. I remember sort of just the punctuation was a little bit, loose. And, so yeah, that was what I don't understand is why it was so popular. I don't know. Okay. The next prompt is, which 3 books are on your personal required reading list? And this one I definitely went back and forth and changed my answer a couple of times. But so let's move Clan of the Cave Bear. Okay. So first one, In Defense of Food. This one was an obvious one for me. And, this was the first nutrition book that I read of Michael Pollan, and started my love affair with his books. And I love his writing style. It is very easy. It's like a conversation, but it's full of good information, factual information. And I was kind of obsessed with nutrition at this point in my life. And so I I just loved this. This was his, eater's manifesto, but, his slogan was kind of eat real food, mostly plants, or no, I'm saying it wrong. Eat food, not too much, and mostly plants. But this book talks about what actually is defined as food now versus what our great grandparents would have considered food. I think the best example is if you look at a children's lunchbox right now, with Go-Gurt and other food items that are not really food. And so eating fresh vegetables, fruit, but also what works for you, like the proteins and not eating what is marketed and what is told for us to eat. If you eat something and you don't feel good when you eat it, then pay attention to that. Don't eat that. But, so eating your fruits and vegetables, eating, does rice, is that work for you versus bread or grains or potatoes or, which starch are you, and just playing that active role. And there's a huge part of food where commercials and advertising and marketing, we're eating things that are not good for us, but, we're told they are, and it's marketed a certain way. And then you go into the grocery store and it's appealing, to the eye. So this was, a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's amazing. And then my all-time favorite, and I'm wearing my shirt that I got when my mom and I went and saw To Kill a Mockingbird at the Strass Center. And so this is hands down my favorite classic. As a child, I was obsessed with the movie and, Gregory Peck. And, because I was a child watching it, I loved Scout and Jem in their childhood and all the things that they did. And, I think I talked about this before, but, as a child, you kind of gloss over the adult, serious topics that are in the book. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I actually read the book. And they did such a beautiful job of the movie following the book. But it was a different experience reading the book as an adult. But so good. And I just love this book. So this one, To Kill a Mockingbird. And then this one is Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, Awakening Your Life's Purpose. And this, for some reason, I'm thinking of the Power of Now. I read this and then I started rereading it because it's a book that I feel like I need to keep reading to remember. And the main takeaway that I got with it was when you experience anything, a conversation, an argument, you see something, being able to process the information without the emotional reaction. And it takes practice. And so I found it very useful and beneficial and helpful. And, so I think it's a fantastic book, of just that in itself. Just, you can have a conversation with someone, and if you process it without the emotional reaction, without jumping, but kind of sitting with it, feeling what you feel, and then forming an opinion or forming the next words. I find it very, very helpful, very good book, but it's a reread and then reread and then reread kind of book. Okay. Number 4. What author have you been avoiding? So I had a little glitch where my camera just stopped recording part of that video. So while I was editing, I had to come back and fix it because, yeah. So I was on prompt number 4. What author have you been avoiding? So, not really an author, but maybe possibly, I've always wanted to read Atlas Shrugged. I've had it up on my shelf, and I actually got another Ayn Rand book. My parents read this and read Fountainhead, and so it was just one of those books that I always wanted to read. It's a big book. It's over 1,000 pages. But I wouldn't say that I'm avoiding the author, but this has been on my shelf for a very long time. And so we're going to go with Ayn Rand, but specifically Atlas Shrugged. And then prompt number 5, what's the hardest book you've ever finished? And I'm going to say the Bible, because I did not read it cover to cover. I have read it over the course of many years, pieces here and there, at different times and focusing on different books and sections. I've also read novels that are the Bible, but they've been written in like a novel format so that it is easier to read. The Bible is not necessarily easy to read, especially certain parts. Some are. So the Bible. Number 6, what's a book that changed how you read? And I am going to say In Defense of Food, because of the time in my life, and I was really into nutrition. That was the first book, and it really jump-started me to read for knowledge, read to research. And of course I had done that in college and in school and everything like that, but this was totally motivated. I wanted to know. I was curious and I was fascinated. And so that was really the first time that I used that. I'm just going to find every book I can about this topic and devour it. So it did change how I read, because before that it was, just all for pleasure. I would only read nonfiction if it was required, I think. I think at that point, I think that's a fair thing to say. Yeah. Okay. Number 7, quality versus quantity. Would you rather read 100 good books in a year or 10 great books? When I first read this question, I was like, well, 10 great books. But then when I thought about it, I am a very stingy 5-star giver. I do a lot of 3 and 4 stars, and those 3 and 4 stars are good books. I like them. I enjoyed them. They just weren't like knock it out of the park, every box checked for me kind of book. I still liked them. And I would still recommend them. So I think I'm going to go with 100 good books, because I like to read a lot. I like to have books, and I would rather have a lot of 3 and 4 star good books than great, I guess. Okay. Prompt number 8. Which genre are you embarrassed to say you have not read? I'm not embarrassed to say, but it is sci-fi. I have not read a lot of sci-fi. Not really like on purpose, but obviously it doesn't interest me because I haven't picked it up. I haven't seeked it out. So, sci-fi. And number 9, which book do you think most people misread? What does seriously well-read mean to you? Okay. So I have watched, because I've seen a lot of these tags, and I think a fair and common answer that I'm seeing is the Bible being misread. I agree with that. So what I'm going to say is a book that I misread. And it is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. And I read that a couple years ago, and I had picked it up thrifting, and this was when I would not really read the back of a book. I liked to be surprised. I liked to not really know what the book was about. And I'm reading it, and it's all over the place. It's not, it was a bit chaotic, but it wasn't, complete thoughts or any, it was just, so as I'm going through, I started to piece it together. And it became very apparent that the main character was autistic and you were looking through his lens. And that was why it was a bit chaotic. And you were getting that sensory overload, of just interacting with people or whatever the situation was. So it was an interesting book and I enjoyed it, but I think it would have been better had I known that from the beginning, and kind of going into it knowing that that's what I'm reading. But that was on me. I did that on purpose. So that was a book that I misread. What does seriously well read mean to me? I think that just means someone that reads a variety of genres by a variety of authors, not just what aligns with your thinking. If you are open to reading things that you don't agree with, if you're open to reading from perspectives that you maybe don't feel comfortable with or you don't agree with, just to experience that and be okay with that. That is, I think, a seriously well-read person. So, and then to tag people, like I said, I've seen a lot of people do this tag, so I'm going to try to find some people that have not and tag them. But this was a very good and challenging book tag, made me think about my answers a lot. And so thank you for watching. And until next time, I'll be reading.